I trained as a nurse in the 1950s, and so this book is a memoir about that, what would it be, a 10-year period between 1952 and 1961 when I came to Canada. I was an academic before I came to Nelson, and I learned how to write academic stuff, which is not creative writing, and I went to creative writing courses here, and I found I was writing about that period in my life for the exercises that we did, and it turned into a book. I always think that writers sometimes forget they're writing for an audience, and because I used to teach teaching, the transfer of the idea that when you're teaching, the most important person is not what you're doing, it's what the students are doing. So I transfer that. It's not so much what I'm writing as I'm writing for somebody. So I was trying to make this entertaining, if you like, and humorous as well, because there were some very funny incidents that happened as I trained. So I wanted to emphasize those.
We had our 3 months in preliminary training school, and we had about 6 weeks on the wards, and then we were put on nights. Now we're only about 18 or 19, and suddenly you're on a 34-bedded ward all by yourself at night. So it's a little startling, to say the least. But this is, we used to meet in our room after nights and tell stories about what had gone on. So this is one of the stories. And it illustrates the sort of wonderful relationship we used to have in those days with physicians. Now, a surgeon was titled Mr., not Doctor, and that was if they were a member of the, if they were a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons, they earned the title of Mr. to recognise that they evolved from barbers. Otherwise, and a dresser is a medical student getting clinical experience. After breakfast, it is still breakfast, even though we have done a night's work. We drag ourselves to the nurse's room, have a bath, make a drink, and meet in one person's room ready to relate the night's events. Usually we end up screaming with hysterical laughter. A psychologist would tell us we are releasing pent-up tension because we are unable to discuss our feelings of inadequacy or describe the impact of the continual exposure to sights, sounds and smells that are beyond our experience or imagination. We revel in humour, the cruder the better. One morning Sandy asked, "Did you hear what happened to wee Jess last night?" We wait expectantly. Jess works on a male surgical ward. She has gone home for nights off, but not before telling Sandy her story. They had an acute appendix in, and Mr. Sedgwick was in theatre waiting to do an emergency appendicectomy. Jess sent for the dresser to come to shave the patient, but he didn't come. The phone rang and a voice said, "Where the hell is that appendix patient? I can't wait all night." Jess told them that she had sent for the dresser to shave the patient and that the patient would be there as soon as he was prepped. Well, a few minutes later, the phone rings, Mr. Sedgwick again. "What the bloody hell are you doing? Get that patient here at once, nurse, or I'll tell the night sister how bloody inefficient you are." Jess didn't know what to do. Should she just send the patient unprepped or what? The charge nurse was at dinner. Jess stood there dithering when suddenly a man in a white coat came barging in. She rushed up to him, thrust a shaving tray into his hands, told him which patient it was and to hurry up because a horrible man kept phoning to shout at her. Sandy starts to laugh and roll about on the bed. "Oh, come on, Sandy," Blink says. "What happened?" Sandy regains control and carries on with her story. A few minutes later, a dresser walked in and said he'd come to shave the patient for theatre. Jess told him another dresser was already there. "What other dresser? I'm the only one on." "The one that's shaving the patient," Jess said. Then the charge nurse came back, goes to see what was going on, and says to Jess, "What's Mr. Sedgwick doing shaving a patient?" Jess nearly died. Well, he and the dresser got the man on a trolley, and as they passed Jess, Mr. Sedgwick winked at her and said, "Next time a horrible man shouts at you on the phone, tell him to bugger off."
People ask me about my writing process, and I'm always impressed with other writers who can answer that question, because I can't. I like to write first thing in the morning. Only thing I can think of is I like to have my feet up. I always have had my feet up, and I generally write longhand, though I do have a laptop now, so I'm trying to make myself write straight into that. But I don't go at it for hours on end. I can't write more than about an hour a day.
The camaraderie was amazing, because even so it was so big, things would happen and the story would whiz round the hospital and everybody would know about it. So most of the time it was a lot of laughter. I spent my third night duty on a baby's ward, and we had babies up to a year. After that they were in the children's ward, and I was on night duty. I came on duty after nights off to find a baby with TB meningitis. He is 9 months old and has ginger hair. His back is arched so badly that his head touches his heels, and he has a dreadful scream-like cry. Sister Howes gives the report. He has had a lumbar puncture and the cerebrospinal pressure was 480 millimetres of water instead of the normal 100 millimetres. Streptomycin was injected into the subarachnoid space, and he is on it intramuscularly also. But I'm afraid there's no hope. He's going to die, probably tonight. I have talked to his parents. They have gone out for something to eat and will be back later. We walk over to the baby's cot, and I feel a heavy sense of uselessness as I look at the pathetic little human. Why does this have to happen to babies? I can accept the death of old people philosophically. Indeed, many of the patients I have nursed are ready for death and resent any intrusion other than pain control. Deaths of babies are always hard, Sister Howes says. It just doesn't seem right. She goes off duty. The night sister visits shortly after, as she has heard about the dying baby. I carry on feeding and changing babies with a heavy heart. I can see Nicholas, for that is his name, from wherever I sit, and his piercing cry reverberates through my head like the penetrating screech of a train whistle. His parents return, and the night sister comes back to talk to them. "Can I hold him, sister?" the mother says. "I want to hold him while he passes on so he knows he's loved." "Of course you can," the sister says. "Put on this gown and sit here." She gently lifts the arched form and places him in his mother's arms. The father stands with his arm around his wife's shoulder. Nicholas starts to convulse. The mother can barely hold him, but she clings on to her baby. I am ready to cry, but both parents are showing enormous restraint, so I do too. After an hour, Nicholas gives one last jerk and is still. His mother cuddles him and kisses him. "Goodbye, darling," she says as she puts him in his cot. "Remember, we loved you." I can't help it. Tears run down my cheeks and I find the parents are comforting me, not vice versa as it should be. "These things happen, nurse," the father says. "Can't be helped. The doctor said he'd be retarded like if he lived, and that would be no life, would it? It's for the best." I can't believe their fortitude, but I'm looking at a generation that has just lived through a major war where death was a daily occurrence and mourning a luxury. Thank you.
when I first came here, I'm one of these people that felt a call, you know, that you belong here, and I think it's because we sit on two ley lines. Now, I don't normally go off into things like that. I had a scientific background, but I think there's something about this place that is inspiring to artistic people in all areas, and that's why we have this town full of incredibly creative people. And as soon as I got here, I started taking creative writing classes, and that's what inspired the book. And I'm still writing, so it must be something in the air.